Disrespect is not an insult, it is a declaration of war. It tells you that the balance of fear has shifted, that the other believes he can strike without consequence, and in the world of power, perception is reality. Once you are seen as one who can be disrespected, you are already defeated, not by the act itself, but by the silent permission it implies. So the first rule is simple. You do not react, you calculate. For the one who reacts loses the initiative. Anger may feel like strength, but in politics, rage is just noise that reveals your position. When they spit on your name, you must not wipe it off. You must let the stain deepen until you decide what it shall mean. Whether it becomes your humiliation or your mask is determined by how you move next. The weak shout, the strong wait. Because time, not words, is the true weapon of the strategist. Every insult carries a thread. Pull it too soon, and you reveal your hand. Let it tighten over days, over weeks, until it strangles the arrogance that spoke it. The art of vengeance is not to destroy your enemy. It is to make him destroy himself while believing it was his own idea. To handle disrespect is not to teach others manners. It is to re-establish hierarchy. And hierarchy is maintained not by apology or confrontation, but by fear, the silent kind that does not roar, but lingers. The fear that says, he knows, he remembers, and he waits. Nothing unsettles the arrogant more than silence from the one they tried to humiliate. Because silence is never neutral, it is a judgment still being written. Learn this. Those who disrespect you once will do it again, not because they hate you, but because you have given them no reason to fear you. Respect is not earned by virtue, it is extracted by consequence. Do not explain yourself, do not argue. Make their insult costly. Turn it into a currency they cannot afford to spend twice. But do not seek revenge in haste. The darkest way is not to retaliate with equal fire, it is to rearrange the game until they no longer matter. True punishment is not destruction, it is irrelevance. When your enemy becomes invisible to your ambitions, when their existence no longer interferes with your purpose, that is the moment they vanish without your needing to lift a hand. Disrespect exposes what the other truly believes about you. And beliefs, once formed, are hard to erase unless you change the conditions that gave birth to them. That is why the wise never demand respect. They construct the necessity of it. Make your power felt, not spoken. The more they see your value tied to their survival, the less they dare to test your limits. Understand, to be feared is not to be hated. Hatred is personal, fear is structural. Hatred dies with emotion, but fear lives through systems, through influence, alliances, favors, and secrets that bind the disobedient long after the heat of offense has cooled. Handle disrespect not as an emotion, but as a logistical problem. Rebuild the conditions that make disrespect impossible. There are times, however, when silence alone is not enough. When the insult is public, visible, and contagious, when it begins to rewrite your image in the minds of others. Then, mercy becomes poison, because mercy shown too soon breeds imitation. If you must strike, do so without drama. One gesture, one precise humiliation, administered in daylight so others may understand. Then retreat to your silence again. Let your calm be mistaken for indifference. It will confuse the restless and terrify the observant. The ruler who cannot handle disrespect without losing his composure will always be ruled by those who provoke him. Power demands restraint, the kind that looks like patience, but is really surveillance. Study every offender, not for their insult, but for their weakness. Every act of disrespect reveals a vulnerability, pride, insecurity, ambition, debt. Use that knowledge not for revenge, but for control. For when you own what drives them, you own them entirely. Remember, to respond emotionally is to accept their frame. To respond strategically is to make them actors in your play. And every actor serves the author, even when they think they are improvising. Let them perform, you direct. Let them mock, you record. Let them believe they have won. You build the scene where they fall. That is the essence of dark diplomacy, to let disrespect become the soil from which your dominion grows. There will always be those who mistake composure for weakness. Let them. They are necessary, for without them, you would have no mirrors to measure your evolution. Every insult is a test of your architecture. If it breaks you, you were not yet built for power. If it refines you, then you are closer to command. The world insults what it secretly fears, and the wise man learns to see the hidden compliment beneath the offense. Do not waste your wrath on those beneath your mission. Power is not proven by reaction, it is proven by endurance. Let them speak, let them lie, let them underestimate. The more they reveal their pettiness, the clearer your altitude becomes. Kings do not descend into arguments. They rewrite the throne from which they are challenged. Handling disrespect in its darkest form means mastering perception, both theirs and yours. If they see that you do not flinch, that you do not bleed from the blow, they begin to question whether they struck at all. And once they doubt the effectiveness of their hostility, they will begin to doubt the meaning of their defiance. That is victory, not the applause of retaliation, but the quiet erosion of the enemy's confidence. In politics, in business, in life, disrespect is not to be avoided, but utilized. It is the friction that reveals the boundaries of your authority. The question is not whether they insult you, but whether you know how to turn that insult into strategy. Because the one who can transform offense into leverage, humiliation into momentum, and silence into dominance, that one does not merely survive power, he becomes it. And when they finally realize what you have done, when they understand that their mockery was the very brick you used to build your fortress, it will be too late. They will bow, not out of admiration, but necessity. And you will say nothing, because in the art of power, the final silence is the loudest answer of all. Disrespect, once mastered, becomes your finest teacher. It shows you where people believe your weakness lies, and thus where your strength must be concealed. The insult is not the wound, it is the map. It reveals the terrain of perception, and the wise ruler studies it in silence, tracing every contour of misunderstanding, every valley of envy, every mountain of pride. For power is not maintained by correcting what people say, it is maintained by shaping what they dare not say again. You must learn to see disrespect not as a moment of offense, but as an act of information. Every gesture, every tone, every omission is data, and in the realm of power, data is the seed of dominance. To be disrespected is to be shown, nakedly, how others calculate your worth, and what could be more valuable than to glimpse, unfiltered, the true hierarchy inside their minds. To the shallow, it is humiliation. To the cunning, it is reconnaissance. Most men burn their reputation defending their name. They fight shadows to prove themselves honorable, and in doing so, they lose the luxury of mystery. But the ruler who understands the deeper art lets the insult breathe, not to forgive it, but to let it reveal its author. For people speak most honestly when they believe you are wounded. That is when the mask falls and the soul of envy exposes itself. Patience, then, is not weakness. It is the weapon that forces your enemy to finish his confession. Do not answer disrespect with defense. Defense acknowledges equality. The one who defends himself accepts that the aggressor's words are worthy of reply. The true sovereign replies only with fate, a rearrangement of circumstance so silent, so inexorable, that the offender never realizes when the floor beneath him began to crumble. Power's revenge is architectural, not emotional. It does not react, it redesigns. And yet, the darkest way to handle disrespect is not even vengeance. It is indifference forged from total superiority of purpose, to let the offender see that your silence was not restraint, but disinterest, that your vision was fixed on matters too vast for their trivial defiance to matter, to let them realize that you are not ignoring them out of mercy, you have simply outgrown their relevance. For no punishment wounds deeper than being unworthy of retaliation. Remember this, you cannot demand respect from those whose admiration you need. The truly powerful require nothing from anyone. They construct such gravity of presence that respect becomes a law of nature around them, not a courtesy extended. Those who approach them feel it instinctively, the quiet weight, the invisible threat, the certainty that every gesture, Every word, every alliance is observed. Power does not beg to be honored. It makes dishonor impossible. There will come moments when disrespect becomes public spectacle, when the crowd watches, waiting to see if the ruler bleeds. In that instant, your every reaction becomes instruction. If you flinch, they will remember. If you retaliate in passion, they will record your instability. But if you move with precision, if your counterstroke feels inevitable rather than emotional, then the audience learns a lesson without you needing to teach it. That to challenge you is to gamble against the odds of time itself. Do not confuse forgiveness with weakness. To forgive is to choose not to waste ammunition. Mercy is only divine when it serves the architecture of control. Every pardon must remind the guilty that their fate was in your hand, and every silence must remind them that it still is. True power is not exercised through destruction, it is exercised through suspended mercy. The shadow of what could happen keeps men obedient far longer than the blow itself. There is a darkness to leadership. Few can endure the loneliness of being both feared and misunderstood. To rule is to live without the comfort of universal approval. The people will call your calm arrogance, your mercy cowardice, your patience deceit. Let them. Their judgment is the tax you pay for sovereignty. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be inevitable. Handling disrespect, therefore, is not about dignity. It is about design. You design how others may approach you. You design what happens when they don't. You design how long memory lasts, how rumors die, how fear circulates, how admiration is engineered. The architecture of respect is built through consistent unpredictability. They must never know which version of you they will awaken with their insolence, the merciful philosopher or the calculating executioner. In time, you will discover that those who once disrespected you will seek your alliance. They will come disguised as loyalists, as admirers, as confessors. Accept their service, but never their friendship. The wolf who once tested your boundary may wear the skin of a sheep, but his teeth remain loyal to hunger. Keep him close enough to use, distant enough to lose. The greatest advantage of being disrespected once is that you will never again forget who the enemy was when the lights were still on. Every ruler must master two silences, the silence of observation and the silence of execution. The first gathers truth, the second delivers it. To handle disrespect without these two silences is to stumble into chaos. Let the world believe you are still, while beneath the surface your mind rearranges the pieces. Power moves like the tide, calm from afar, deadly up close. And when the time comes to act, do not announce your strike. Let consequence speak for you. Let the offender realize too late that what seemed like coincidence was design, that what appeared to be chance was the echo of their own arrogance. The perfect retaliation leaves no fingerprints, only the unmistakable scent of inevitability. The offended will call it justice. The wise will call it art. So remember, disrespect is never the end. It is the beginning of a new equation. It is the whisper that tests your architecture, the spark that reveals whether your power is real or merely performed. Do not curse it. Study it. For every insult is an unintentional education in human nature. And the one who understands human nature rules not by force, but by foresight. There is a point beyond revenge, beyond fear, beyond even respect, a point where your presence itself becomes a reminder of consequence, where you do not need to respond, because your existence is the answer. That is the darkest way to become so inevitable that disrespect dies before it reaches your name. To be so composed that even your silence becomes law. To rise beyond the reach of insult, until those who once mocked you now whisper your name as myth. And when that day comes, do not gloat, do not smile. Simply continue walking through the corridors of your design, silent, steady, untouchable, for in the theater of power, the greatest applause is fear, disguised as admiration. To endure long enough to command respect is to embrace a discipline most men cannot bear, the discipline of invisibility. You will find that those who seek validation are consumed by their own noise, while those who move in silence bend the course of nations. Disrespect, when aimed at you, is not an interruption. It is proof that your shadow has grown large enough to be noticed. It means your presence disturbs the balance. The wise do not recoil from that disturbance, they refine it. They turn mockery into mirror, seeing in it not the reflection of their weakness, but the limits of their opponent's imagination. Understand this. People insult not what they hate, but what they fear becoming. They cloak their envy in contempt and their impotence in irony. Their words are not daggers, they are admissions, each one a confession of powerlessness disguised as wit. The ruler who knows this smiles inwardly, for he recognizes that disrespect is not rebellion, it is worship inverted. The fool tries to extinguish the flame that burns brighter than his own, and in doing so, proves the flame's existence. Do not let your ego mistake small sparks for real fire. The insult of the insignificant is beneath retaliation. To engage with the petty is to grant them legitimacy. Reserve your weapons for those whose fall would echo. The art of hierarchy demands selective blindness. Let the dogs bark. Their noise does not disturb the moon. True dignity is not silence forced by fear, but silence chosen by superiority. Every time you choose not to react, your power consolidates. Your restraint becomes legend. The world starts to whisper, "He knows something we do not." That is the genesis of myth when your calm begins to look supernatural, when people mistake your patience for prophecy. That is the darkest mastery, to make others afraid, not of your wrath, but of your stillness. For wrath can be survived, stillness cannot be measured. And yet, never forget that beneath serenity lies the blade. Mercy without capacity for violence is weakness. The wise ruler cultivates both. He must be the garden and the sword. He must let the flowers bloom even as the soil remembers the blood that watered it, for there can be no peace without the credible threat of ruin. It is the tension between these two, beauty and terror, that creates authority. There will be days when you are tempted to strike early, to prove you are not to be trifled with. Resist. Premature punishment reveals insecurity. Your enemies should never see you react. They should only feel the consequences unfold, as though the universe itself had turned against them. The moment they realize you were the author of their misfortune, the lesson is learned too late to be undone. That is the way of shadows to control outcomes without ever appearing in the scene. Disrespect thrives where insecurity lingers. The more stable your purpose, the less insult can find purchase. When you know who you are and what your path demands, others' opinions become echoes fading in an empty hall. But when you are unsure, every whisper becomes thunder. Thus, the true antidote to disrespect is not vengeance, but vision. Purpose so vast that no word, no rumor, no rebellion can wound it. Do not try to change the world's mouth, reshape its memory. People forget insults, but they remember outcomes. In the end, your deeds will overwrite their mockery. Time, that ancient censor, erases the laughter of the crowd and preserves only the structure left behind. Let your legacy be so unshakable that even those who despised you must build their futures upon your ruins. Power does not defend itself through explanation. It defends itself through inevitability. The moment your success becomes too vast to contest, disrespect becomes absurd. The mocker becomes the fool who laughed at the tide. The wise do not silence their critics, they outlast them. Endurance is the most elegant revenge. And if one day, after all the storms, those who once scorned you come seeking alliance, do not reject them, use them. Let them build what they once tried to burn. Let them serve, knowing that they now bow not to your name, but to their own miscalculation. For in politics, reconciliation is not mercy, it is conquest in disguise. There is no light without shadow, and no respect without its violation. Every insult refines the edges of your control. Every betrayal sharpens your perception. Those who disrespect you are unwitting sculptors, shaping the stone of your character with their blows. And when the sculpture is complete, when you stand polished by pain, radiant in restraint, you will realize that their mockery was not your enemy, it was your initiation. So walk through every insult like a monarch through smoke, untouched, unslowed, unseen in your thoughts. Let others mistake your silence for indifference, your calm for defeat, your smile for surrender. For beneath it all, the machinery of power hums, patient and precise. One day, those who mocked you will call your endurance wisdom, your silence strategy, your distance divine. And when they do, you will not need to speak. For the truest victory over disrespect is not to make them fear you, it is to make them revere the silence that once answered their noise. Imagine the courtroom of perception, that invisible arena where reputation stands trial before the eyes of the many. It is there, not in your heart, that disrespect must be answered. But the verdict is not won through argument, it is won through the orchestration of appearances. When they doubt you, let your results embarrass their disbelief. When they mock you, let your silence age into prophecy. When they lie about you, let time expose how their lies crumble under the weight of your persistence. For in the politics of image, proof speaks a language that slander cannot translate. Think of the general whose officers whisper behind his back. He does not confront them in the campfire's light. He leads them into a battle none expected to survive and emerges victorious. In that moment, the murmurs die not because he silenced them, but because he rendered them irrelevant. Nothing buries disrespect deeper than undeniable triumph. Those who once questioned you will now rewrite their memories to have always admired you. Such is human nature. It betrays power but worships success. Or consider the statesman who, exiled by his own council, returns years later, not with an army, but with influence so vast that even his enemies must negotiate through him. He does not demand apology. He becomes indispensable. His vengeance is not the destruction of those who betrayed him, but their dependence upon his favor. This is the highest revenge, to turn those who disrespected you into instruments of your ascent. The entrepreneur ignored by his peers, dismissed as reckless, dangerous, unfit, he does not shout for recognition. He builds, stone by stone, until the same men who laughed now seek his partnership. They no longer remember their mockery. They call it misunderstanding. Because in the language of results, ridicule translates into regret. Disrespect is only fatal to those who stop moving. The diplomat, insulted in council by the envoy of a rival state, does not retaliate with anger. He smiles, knowing that nations, like men, are prisoners of pride. Weeks later, when that same envoy's country faces crisis, he sends aid discreetly, not out of kindness, but calculation. The gesture binds the offender in debt. For in diplomacy, generosity is not virtue, it is leverage. The world rarely remembers the insult, but it never forgets who owed whom. The commander who is mocked by his soldiers for caution waits until arrogance costs them dearly. When the enemy crushes the overconfident, he advances precisely where they failed, reclaiming victory with methodical restraint. The lesson is engraved in blood, not words. Those who disrespected his patience now kneel to its necessity. Power, after all, is not speed, it is control. Even in the private realm, the lesson holds. The man betrayed in love or friendship does not beg for validation. He withdraws into discipline, becomes unrecognizable in growth. Years later, the one who left him for weakness stands before the new fortress he has become, unable to reconcile memory with reality. That confusion, that disbelief is the purest form of vengeance. For the greatest punishment you can inflict upon those who disrespected your worth is to evolve beyond their comprehension. The scholar ridiculed for ideas, two radical watches, as time turns ridicule into reverence. The same voices that mocked his theory now quote him in defense of their own authority. He has not changed, only the season of perception has. History, like power, always avenges in silence. To master disrespect, therefore, is to think historically, to know that every humiliation is temporary, and that those who endure the longest will write the final narrative. There was once a ruler who punished every slight immediately. Swift justice, he called it. His people feared him but did not respect him, for fear born of impulse breeds rebellion, while fear born of design breeds obedience. His successor, wiser and colder, let his enemies breathe longer. He studied their patterns, their alliances, their weaknesses. When he finally moved, his strike was so complete that resistance seemed like suicide. His power endured not because he was harsher, but because his vengeance was patient. Disrespect is like frost. It reveals where the cracks in your walls are. The architect of power must not curse the frost, but use it. Every insult is a signal. Strengthen this bridge. Fortify that gate. Silence this rumor not with denial, but with demonstration. The greatest fortresses are built not to prevent attack, but to teach the enemy the futility of trying. When you make disrespect costly, it becomes rare. Look at nature. The lion does not roar at every bird that mocks him from the trees. He reserves his violence for what threatens the pride. His silence is not weakness, but hierarchy. The river does not argue with the stones that block it. It erodes them over time. So too must power learn to wear down insolence with endurance. The longer you hold your line, the more time becomes your accomplice. Disrespect is also a mirror of weakness. The leader insulted by his subordinates should not ask, "Why do they mock me?" but, "What fear have I failed to inspire?" Respect is not inherited, it is engineered. If they can speak against you without consequence, it means you have neglected the architecture of fear. Every system, political, military, corporate, or personal, requires a pressure that keeps rebellion costly. You cannot command loyalty by pleading. You can only sustain it by consequence. There was a minister once who faced constant ridicule in public. His opponents laughed at his calm demeanor, mistaking it for naivety. Yet quietly, he placed their allies in positions of invisible dependence. He arranged contracts, debts, and ambitions until the entire opposition was tied to him by their own greed. When the day came to vote, every voice that had mocked him voted in his favor. No threats were made. The insult had turned into obedience because he had replaced pride with necessity. The darkest way to handle disrespect, then, is neither cruelty nor forgiveness. It is redirection. Redirect the energy of contempt into your own ascendance. Make their mockery fuel your machinery. Let the insult pay its own cost by propelling your progress. Because in the end, the only answer to disrespect that history remembers is supremacy. When you have built something undeniable, every past slight transforms into prophecy fulfilled. So let them underestimate. Let them sneer, gossip, and doubt. You are not here to defend yourself, you are here to outlive them. One day, when your name moves through the corridors of power like quiet thunder, when your influence has become invisible but omnipresent, those who once disrespected you will kneel not because you demanded it, but because the world itself has aligned around your endurance. And as they bow, you will not need to say a word. The silence will speak for you, vast, unbroken, final. The darkest way to handle disrespect is not to confront it, not to conceal it, but to use it. It is to convert contempt into a force multiplier, to let the insult become the ignition point of strategy. When you are disrespected, it means you have been underestimated. That is your advantage. For the underestimated man is invisible to the calculations of his rivals. They measure your silence as weakness, your distance as defeat. Let them. The greatest victories are born in the blind spot of the arrogant. To handle disrespect in its darkest form is to understand that it operates on two levels: the surface of emotion and the depth of perception. The surface tempts you to react, to reclaim dignity through confrontation. But the depth, the true battlefield, lies in the collective mind. Disrespect shifts perception. It alters the world's map of who holds power. Therefore, your task is not to answer the insult, but to redraw the map. You do this not through rebuttal, but through redirection, changing alliances, shifting narratives, controlling access, and quietly dismantling the structure that allowed the offender to believe they could speak. When you have been disrespected, the mistake has already been made, not yours, but theirs. They have revealed the boundary they do not believe exists. Your response must not aim to correct them, but to confirm that boundary in a way they will never forget. Not through fury, not through noise, but through consequence, so subtle it seems ordained by nature itself. The darkest way is to let them believe fate, not you, delivered the punishment. In every hierarchy, power is defined by the distance between offense and consequence. The greater the delay, the more mysterious the authority. To respond too soon is to reveal proximity. To wait is to suggest omnipresence. The wise ruler allows time to fold around the insult until it no longer looks like revenge, it looks like order restoring itself. And when that order returns, it arrives as inevitability, not retaliation. Disrespect thrives on equality. The moment you answer directly, you validate the offender as your peer. The darkest path is to deny them that honor entirely. Let your silence remind them they are not on your level. Let their words echo unanswered until they realize that what they sought acknowledgement will never come. Deny them relevance, and they will wither under the weight of their own insignificance. For the true humiliation of the insolent is not punishment, it is irrelevance. To handle disrespect is to handle perception, and perception is a war of frames. Every man seeks to pull you into his frame, his logic, his terms, his arena. But if you are to dominate, you must never fight on borrowed ground. Instead, dissolve the confrontation, withdraw into a higher field where their language cannot reach. They will rage, and the crowd will see their desperation for what it is, the noise of someone who has already lost power but not yet realized it. The darkest method is always indirect. It does not teach through pain, but through loss of position. The offender finds that doors once open are now closed, alliances once firm now ambiguous, opportunities once certain now delayed. No decree is given, no word is spoken, only a pattern of exclusion too consistent to be coincidence. In this way, the disrespectful learn not to fear your temper, but your system. The lesson is absorbed not through emotion, but through survival. And when you rule through systems rather than sentiment, disrespect dies before it begins. Because people no longer measure their behavior against your mood, but against your reach. They come to understand that respect is not personal, it is practical. It is the cost of remaining in proximity to power. When that realization dawns, loyalty becomes mechanical, born not from affection, but from necessity. That is the essence of real control. The darkest way is not to extinguish the spark of disrespect, but to smother it in architecture. Build a structure so vast that no single voice can defy it. Create dependencies that silence rebellion before it speaks. Construct alliances that reward discretion and punish insolence without command. Make the system itself your enforcer, so that when someone disrespects you, it is not you they fear, it is the invisible mechanism that moves against them. You remain calm, distant, untouchable the source, not the sword. To respond in darkness is to play a longer game. It is to allow the offender's impulse to decay in public while your silence ages into legend. The one who disrespects you burns quickly. You, who remain unmoved, endure. Time punishes the impulsive. Power belongs to those who can outweight insult without losing precision. Understand, the darkest answer to disrespect is transformation, not retaliation. Turn offense into fuel, slight into clarity, exclusion into strategy. Let the sting refine your discipline, sharpen your timing, purify your ambition. For disrespect is the world's way of testing whether your self-control is real or rehearsed. Only those who can remain unmoved in the face of insult ascend to command others. At last, when you have mastered this art, when you have trained yourself not to bleed under mockery, nor flinch under scorn, you will realize the truth that all rulers eventually learn no one truly disrespects power. They only test whether it still exists. And once they feel its quiet weight pressing upon them, they remember. They remember without needing to be told. This is the darkest way to handle disrespect, not through anger, not through mercy, but through inevitability. To become a force so unshakable, so disciplined, so quietly absolute, that those who once dared to mock you now guard your silence with their own. For in the end, power does not argue, it simply remains. And those who once disrespected it are left to decay in the shadow of what they failed to understand. Power does not need to prove itself. It only needs to persist. The ruler who understands this never chases vindication. He knows that the memory of insult fades faster than the memory of power. To respond to disrespect is to make it part of your record. To ignore it strategically is to erase it from history. Every word spoken in rage strengthens the offender. Every silence held with composure weakens him. Authority is not maintained through emotion, but through endurance, through the cold consistency that outlives all provocations. In the theater of human ambition, men test the boundaries of respect, not out of courage, but out of calculation. They wish to measure how far they can move before they are struck. The ruler must let them approach far enough to feel safe, then punish not merely the act, but the thought that inspired it. That punishment must be rare, deliberate, and final. For nothing breeds loyalty like the spectacle of justice executed without noise. There is wisdom in allowing small disrespect to exist. It serves as a warning to others. Absolute control invites secret rebellion. Calculated tolerance breeds visible submission. The wise prince allows men to think themselves free in thought, so that their obedience in action feels voluntary. Thus he rules both their bodies and their illusions. The art is not to eliminate contempt, but to domesticate it, to channel its energy into productivity. When men believe they can insult you without danger, they lose fear. When they believe every slight might carry invisible consequence, they govern their own tongues. The greatest ruler governs less by decree than by atmosphere. The scent of risk in the air is often stronger than the command of law. Therefore, make fear a presence that needs no messenger. Let it move quietly, as wind between walls. The moment a man disrespects you openly, he has already calculated your reaction. Surprise him by denying him that satisfaction. Let his insult die unanswered. Then watch as his anxiety grows in proportion to your calm. Soon, he will seek to interpret your silence, to predict your move, to beg for clarity. That is the moment you have conquered him, when his mind becomes the prison built by his own audacity. A ruler's dignity is his armor. It must never be pierced by the noise of vanity. The insult is not dangerous because of what it says. It is dangerous because of what it provokes. The moment your authority bends to defend personal emotion, your subjects begin to confuse your feelings with your office. Never let them. The man may be insulted. The prince must remain inviolable. To mix the two is to invite chaos into the order of the state. The wisest response to disrespect is preparation. Every slight reveals discontent, and discontent is the seed of revolt. Do not uproot it with fury. Cultivate it into loyalty through design. Give the restless man new labor, the proud man new titles, the envious man new dependence. Let every emotion that could turn against you find a purpose that serves you. Disrespect left idle becomes rebellion. Disrespect redirected becomes service. In governing men, perception outweighs truth. What they see defines what they believe, and what they believe defines what they obey. When you are disrespected, the true wound is not in the insult itself, but in the image it paints. Therefore, restore image first, ego later. Power that appears unbroken is unbroken. Men will believe strength where they see no tremor. So move as if unbothered, decide as if unconcerned, and build as if insult never touched you. This steadiness terrifies more than vengeance. No ruler can prevent disrespect entirely. Envy is the tax of greatness. To be spoken against is proof that your shadow blocks the light of another. You cannot command admiration without awakening resentment. The goal, then, is not to silence opposition, but to control its rhythm, to ensure that every word spoken against you eventually strengthens your position. Turn slander into suspicion, suspicion into division, and division into loyalty. That is the alchemy of statecraft. If you wish to rule long, you must learn to convert offense into opportunity. Every act of disrespect exposes hidden alliances, disloyal minds, and weak hearts. Do not destroy them all. Mark them. Let them think they are unseen while you shape the world around their ignorance. When their usefulness ends, remove them quietly, not with punishment, but with replacement. The most efficient retribution is obscurity to erase a man's influence so completely that his disappearance provokes no question. To master power, you must detach dignity from emotion. A ruler's self-respect is not felt, it is calculated. It is a shield of appearances maintained even when the heart trembles. The crowd must never see you wounded. Even blood must be perceived as strategy. When you are insulted, let them see you walk as though fate itself walks beside you. The weight of composure bends the will of those who lack it. Never meet insolence directly. The frontal answer is for equals. The indirect answer belongs to rulers. If a man mocks you, elevate another in his place. If a group doubts you, reward their rivals. Replace confrontation with reward and reorganization. Make the world rearrange itself in your favor. This is the art of invisible retribution where no hand is lifted, yet every offender finds his position diminished. Disrespect, when properly understood, is a signal from providence. It reminds you that vigilance must never sleep. Comfort softens the ruler. Insult sharpens him. The moment you no longer provoke envy or hostility, your power has ceased to grow. Therefore, greet every act of contempt as confirmation that you still ascend. Only the forgotten are safe from insult. Remember always, human respect is a currency unstable, emotional, and easily spent. The ruler cannot rely on it. He must replace it with structure. Men will obey out of fear, need, or self-interest long after admiration fades. So long as the mechanisms of gain and loss favor you, disrespect remains only a whisper. Let them speak, so long as they act in accordance with your design. In the end, the darkest response to disrespect is continuity. To endure without reaction, to maintain the course without deviation, to show the world that no wound can alter the machinery of your purpose, that is supremacy. For when men realize that no word, no gesture, no rebellion can make you stumble, they cease to challenge. They call it destiny, though it is only discipline. And so, learn to stand unmoved. Let time destroy your enemies more efficiently than anger ever could. Let the years turn their defiance into dust, while your silence becomes legend. That is how a ruler wins not once, but forever, not by striking back, but by standing so still that the world learns never again to strike at all. The measure of a ruler's greatness is not in how he punishes, but in how he absorbs insult without fracture. The truly powerful man is not untouched by disrespect, he is tested by it. Every provocation is an inquiry into his self-command. The weak man answers every question. The strong man allows silence to become his reply. For silence in the right hands is not absence, it is architecture. It builds mystery, and mystery breeds obedience. The people fear what they cannot read, and they respect what they cannot predict. You must understand, the mind of the ruler is a fortress more sacred than any castle. Once emotion gains entry, strategy becomes compromised. Rage makes decisions too quickly, pride too narrowly, sorrow too long. The ruler must train his soul as he trains his soldiers to strike only when timing promises advantage, never when emotion demands satisfaction. For the insult that provokes an instant reply is a trap. The insult that provokes no reply becomes a snare for the one who cast it. Power requires the discipline to appear above injury. You must let the offender believe he has landed a blow, while quietly turning his triumph into exposure. Men who speak against power reveal their nature. They confess in public what they conceal in private. Let them speak freely. You gain more from their arrogance than from their obedience. The fool who insults reveals his mind. The wise man who watches learns where to strike. It is not in the moment of disrespect that you lose power, but in the perception of how you carry it. To look disturbed is to invite further testing. To appear unchanged is to drain the courage of future challengers. In the court of power, emotion is weakness because it humanizes you. Never let them see the human, let them see the institution. The mask of calm is not deception, it is protection. The prince must treat reputation as a living weapon, forged by rumor, maintained by fear, tempered by patience. Every insult tests the integrity of that weapon. Do not swing it wildly. Let it gleam untouched, and it will blind those who stare too long. Reputation is the armor that outlasts flesh. Once it becomes self-sustaining, it will protect you even in your absence. Disrespect also serves another purpose. It reveals what cannot be controlled. Every ruler learns that loyalty bought with favor is temporary. The insult exposes the threshold of each man's devotion. The one who insults you publicly for small gain would sell you completely for larger. Therefore, let insult be your measurement, not your wound. It is a diagnostic instrument. It tells you where faith has decayed and where power must be renewed. When governing people, remember that no punishment is greater than necessity. If you wish to extinguish the will to defy, make obedience the only rational choice. Construct your world so that those who oppose you suffer not from your wrath, but from exclusion from your system. Men can resist anger. They cannot resist irrelevance. The one who insults you seeks attention, deny it, and his rebellion withers in darkness. But do not confuse indifference with neglect. To handle disrespect wisely is to watch everything, forgive nothing, and reveal neither. The mind must remember every slight, as a historian records wars not for vengeance, but for precision. Power built on forgetfulness is fragile. Power built on memory is unbreakable. For when the time arrives, and retribution is required, your actions must seem divine, exact, necessary, inevitable. Let no one mistake your patience for peace. Patience is the camouflage of the powerful. The ruler who responds instantly teaches others his rhythm. The ruler who waits teaches the world to fear his stillness. Delay creates uncertainty, and uncertainty is the shadow from which control emerges. Men cannot fight what they cannot predict. Let them drown in their own expectation while you remain unmoved. In the councils of the mighty, disrespect takes subtle forms: omission, mockery disguised as wit, resistance disguised as counsel. Each must be observed, none ignored. But reaction is the domain of inferiors. The master of politics does not expose the serpent. He makes it coil tighter. He grants the offender comfort until comfort becomes confession. Then, when the trap closes, the punishment appears to the world not as cruelty, but as necessity. Power is not in the act of domination, but in the ability to define what constitutes dignity. Those who are slaves to pride fight every insult. Those who command themselves allow insult to become irrelevant. The ruler who can reshape the definition of offense reshapes the boundaries of fear. When men no longer know what provokes you, they tread carefully in all directions. That is the true crown, not of gold, but of uncertainty. Remember always, a throne is built upon controlled perception. The people's faith, the noble's loyalty, the enemy's hesitation all stem from what they believe about your reaction. Thus, the insult that makes you seem fragile costs you kingdoms. The insult that makes you seem infinite wins them. When the world sees that no attack diminishes your design, it begins to interpret your silence as divine will. You cease to be merely powerful, you become inevitable. And when inevitability replaces authority, you no longer need to rule. The world governs itself around your existence. Disrespect, once a threat, becomes impossible, for no one insults the law of gravity, they merely learn to move under it. The highest mastery of power is not in crushing the insolent, but in evolving beyond the possibility of insult altogether. That is the final discipline, to live so high above vanity that no wound can reach you, and so deep within reason that no praise can corrupt you. In that stillness, you will discover what lesser men never see, that the only true answer to disrespect is permanence. All else fades, all else reacts. But permanence, the quiet continuation of power despite all attempts to provoke it, that is the ruler's immortality. The end of all power is not applause, nor fear, nor glory, it is understanding. The ruler who endures learns that disrespect was never truly aimed at him, but at the idea of control itself. Men rebel against the image of authority because they cannot bear to see in another what they lack in themselves. Their insults are confessions of their own confinement. To be disrespected, therefore, is not tragedy, but proof of relevance. No one mocks the forgotten. In the end, the darkest way to handle disrespect is neither silence nor revenge, it is transcendence. It is to rise beyond the human reflex to defend, and instead to govern the forces that produce contempt. It is to treat insult not as noise, but as weather, sometimes bitter, always passing, never altering the shape of the mountain it touches. The mountain does not answer the wind. It remains, and the wind eventually tires. The ruler who survives is not the loudest, nor the kindest, nor the most righteous. It is the one who refuses to descend, for every word spoken in defense lowers the throne by one step. Every display of outrage gives the offender equality. The ruler who understands this becomes untouchable, not because he cannot be harmed, but because harm cannot alter his design. He acts from principle, not emotion, from strategy, not vanity. Power, once matured, no longer requires expression. It exists as an atmosphere, an unseen law that bends events toward its will. And those who once mocked you, those who shouted your name in derision, will one day whisper it in reverence, unsure of when the shift occurred. That is the quiet vengeance of endurance, to outlast mockery until time itself kneels before your patience. To command is to remain constant while the world loses balance. To rule is to preserve equilibrium not only in the realm, but within oneself. Disrespect cannot shake the ruler who has mastered his own mind. His calm becomes prophecy, his restraint legend. The more others provoke, the more his silence expands, until even those who hate him begin to fear the gravity of his stillness. In this lies the final truth. Power is not the act of dominating others, but of mastering response. The ruler who reacts is ruled by his emotions. The ruler who endures becomes history itself. And history does not answer. Insulted buries it. So walk forward without haste, without defense, without resentment. Let every insult become stone beneath your feet, every betrayal the foundation of your ascent. For the world will always speak, but only the unmoved will endure. The highest form of control is composure, and the deepest form of vengeance is existence. In the end, the one who learns to turn disrespect into stillness, insult into structure, and offense into order, that one rules not for a moment, but forever.